polite, but I've seen others that literally treat people worse than jail guards treat prisoners. It's just incredible. And also, they're supposed to take a medical ID card when they're clearly wanding someone's knee, and it's a metal knee or a metal hip. I've talked to Governor Ventura about this. They all know who he is. I've seen him ask for autographs, but then they grab his crotch. I've flown with him right in front of him. Ron Paul was on 2 weeks ago. He said, yes, they grab his crotch. I have sat there and watched nothing but women and children being searched when I was in San Jose. So they also randomly only search certain groups. I mean, this is a complete journey towards submission to these untrained, in many respects, federal goons, Congressman. I mean, this is, as you said, so Orwellian. What about the fact that they're not even following their own procedures?
They don't often follow their own procedures. For example, when we created the Opt-out Alliance back shortly before Thanksgiving, and we wanted to do air traveler rights cards, which we have available. People go to Opt-out Alliance. We put on the back of that card some of the rights that people have. And even though you can find these, you really have to dig for them through the regulations and the manuals and so forth that TSA and DHS have available. Because they don't like to let people know, for example, that if you are going to have one of the hand searches done, you do have a right to have it done privately. You do have a right to have somebody present with you, but they don't like to advertise that. With regard to those things that they do that are contrary to or are not authorized in their statute or in the regulations, they rely primarily simply on telling people and people acquiescing because they don't know any better or they think the government is telling them the truth.
Congressman, specifically dealing with the TSA, I mean, just in your gut, where do you see this fight going? The pilots are allowed to fly this, giant 100-and-something-thousand-pound 747 missile, and they said, you want to grab my genitals? Now all they've got to do is show their ID to make sure they are the pilot. Totally reasonable. Now the unions for the flight attendants are saying no, and the TSA is backing off on them. Now they're talking about not groping small children as intensely. Lawsuits have been filed at courthouses in multiple states like Colorado. They've stopped naked body scanning below 18-year-olds because it violates the child porn laws. Where do you see this fight going? In your gut, do you agree with me that this is something actually that's gone too far, people being sexually violated, and that no matter what the TSA does or how much propaganda they put out or how much intimidation, that if you don't do it, we'll give you $11,000 fines or we'll put you on a no-fly list? I mean, do you see them losing this?
They will lose it. The American people will prevail, but it's going to take a lot of hard work over an extended period of time, Alex. It's not going to be successful. That is the fight for freedom and to rein in this intrusive, overbearing, and unnecessary, unconstitutional government behavior. It's going to take more than simply a few people protesting for a day or on a particular day and then hoping that because, for example, if TSA tries to neutralize a protest by simply not turning on or turning off the full body scanners, that the problem goes away. People are sadly mistaken. So on the one hand, there is cause for a very slight degree of optimism, and let me explain that. First of all, you mentioned the Real ID. The Real ID was supposed to have been implemented several years ago, but has not yet been implemented and may never be implemented because the American people and state governments objected to it and objected to it loudly.
Well, you fought that. I mean, you led the charge against it.
Absolutely, and that's one of those rare victories that we've had. Now, you can never let up in the fight against government oppression. Never, ever let up. So, it's a constant battle to make sure that the real ID doesn't surface as something else. They'll give it a new acronym and so forth, or they'll fund it partially somewhere and then come back to it again later. But at least for now, that's been a very significant success in fighting government intrusion and unconstitutional behavior. Secondly, even though these are small victories that you just indicated with regard to airline pilots and some loosening of the intrusive searches and the X-rays on certain types of persons, children, under and minors, and so forth, it's going to take a lot more. I mean, as long as the government is able to have people subject themselves to a naked body scanner, with the only alternative being a grossly invasive manual search, without articulating any suspicion that the person that they're searching, either electronically or manually, has done anything wrong, as long as people are willing to put up with that, it's going to embolden government to continue to press the envelope. I'm also hopeful that the court challenges will be successful. I'm also hopeful that some of the new chairmen coming into Congress, for example, John Mica of Florida, who is likely to be the Transportation Committee chair in the House with responsibility over air travel, and Darrell Issa of California, who is likely to take over as chair of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee, that both of these chairs on the House side will very shortly after taking over their positions, which seems likely as chairman of these two key committees, will hold some real tough and consistent long-term oversight hearings on TSA and what they're doing.
All right, Congressman, a bunch of quick questions in the 12 minutes we've got left with you. Specifically, dealing with some of your FOIA requests that you've put out. Bob Barr investigates TSA stand-down on National Opt-Out Day. I mean, if they're saying that this terror threat was so imminent, they had to stick their hands down people's pants and put nuns and little old ladies in naked body scanners, which they've been caught saving, by the way, folks, just continual deception, then isn't that then some type of stand-down or dereliction of duty or fraud? If, as we've now confirmed, even mainstream news has confirmed, but I had employees that flew that day in multiple airports, that they did completely stand down the scanners at most airports. They didn't do the pat-downs. They were just running people through them. At some of the other airports, they just curtailed it and then ran this hoax saying, oh, it was TSA Appreciation Day. No one opted out. I mean, that looks like that could be criminal right there. I mean, shouldn't we have some type of congressional investigation about the stand down, A, and then B, watchdog probes, DHS spying on Drudge, PrisonPlanet.com, Matt Drudge, Alex Jones. The Drudge Report, of course, has been carrying that. So talk about, A, the stand down, and B, your FOIA dealing with persecution, because even CNN has reported that they believe their reporters and others have been put on the list after running reports critical.
It's a real problem that we've gotten to the point in this country where if you simply question what the government is doing, you're going to find yourself on the wrong end of that government power. We see it in a number of areas, Alex. We see it when citizens simply use a camera video or a handheld video to record what police are doing in the public arena, where they appear to be beating up somebody or taking action that they shouldn't, and having then the police come after the people that are videotaping, recording what is being done in the open.
Yeah, there's no perception. I mean, as a congressman and lawyer and everything else, there's no perception of privacy. So why do the cops march over 200 yards and then beat you up and arrest you for videotaping them?
It's a problem, and we see the same thing with regard to some of the folks that have had what seems very clearly to be vindictive retaliation against them by TSA simply for raising some questions or objecting to what's been going on. But the lawsuits hopefully will start clearing some of this up, and people need to not be intimidated. They need to be polite. They need to be respectful. I've never urged anybody not to be polite and respectful. If the government appears to be doing something that you know not to be proper and that your rights are being violated. But it's a sad day when people find that simply because they question government authority and what government is doing, that they then have retaliatory action taken against them.
Well,
and
Congressman,
this is something that Congress ought to look into.
So this, I'm sorry to interrupt, so that is something Congress should look into?
Absolutely, they should. The two committees that I indicated, the Government Reform Committee that will be chaired by Darrell Issa of California, and the Transportation Committee that will be chaired by John Mica of Florida.
Obviously, you've got some gravitas as a long-serving former congressman, committee chairman. You were also in the CIA for many years. Hopefully they won't ignore your organization's FOIA request. I don't think it should be called a request. It's a demand under law, but they ignore it so often, as you know. But I've tried to get my FBI file, and they won't even respond. I got a lawyer involved. They said national security. Lord knows what's in that thing. Do you think you'll get any success getting this information from the TSA? And if you do, what's the time frame generally?
These things can take a long time, unfortunately, a lot longer than they should. We hope to have the records within 20 days. Although they may respond that it takes longer for some reason or whatnot. I'm hopeful that we'll get at least some good information from the FOIA request that we sent in on the 29th of November. But we'll just have to wait and see. It is troubling that there certainly appears to be, as you've already indicated, a TSA stand down on the use of the full-body, naked-body scanners on the days that there was a great deal of attention drawn to opting out, even as the TSA was claiming that the use of these scanners is absolutely essential to protect the traveling public. You can't have it both ways.
Absolutely. A few final questions. Jesse Ventura, the former governor, has talked about being groped here on air. Ron Paul talked about, I said, did they touch your genitals? He said, yes, it's totally disgusting. Other congressmen I've had on have said, yes, they've been groped. But then senior committee chairmen and cabinet members and Obama people, if they're not on private jets, they are exempt. So, A, have you been groped, Congressman, as someone who flies a lot? And B, what do you think of the fact that some people in government are exempt?
Well, it's always, I always get a kick out of these big wigs in government saying, it's okay for the American public. Don't worry, these are essential steps, and they're not unconstitutional, and they're not too invasive, but they won't go through them. Even a few weeks ago, for example, when Secretary Napolitano of the Department of Homeland Security was at an airport for a news conference announcing the installation of a bunch of these naked body scanners. She was asked, I think, by the media to go ahead and go through and show us how it works, and she refused. These top government folks, they don't live like the rest of us. They don't have to put up with this nonsense, so it's easy for them to say that everybody else ought to do it. And even some of those who are not in top cabinet level or sub-cabinet level positions, but, for example, may have so-called security details that travel with them, don't have to go through the